Hey everyone, it's Tanya and I'm here with Shanti Hubbard. She's the founding partner of Chan Hubbard and she also happens to be my college roommate. Say hi, Shanti.
Hey.
Anyway, Shanti's here today to talk with us a little bit about uh, forming the right legal structure for your business. So before we jump in, just want to give you guys a quick rundown of what we're going to do today. First, Shanti's going to quickly share her background and tell us a little bit about her experience with legal structures. Then we'll talk more about legal structures and a little bit about best and worst practices. After that, we'll move on to my favorite part, which is the business case. I'll give her a scenario very similar to what many of you are experiencing, and she will tell us her thoughts about how one would go about it and how much time they would spend on each step. And then last but not least, we'll move on over to last thoughts. So anyway, that sound good to you, Shanti?
Sounds great.
All right, so to start on off, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background in law as well as your experience helping businesses choose the right legal structure?
Sure. So I'm an attorney. I've been practicing this is going into my 7th year. My background initially was in litigation on the criminal side. I did that for about 5 years, and then I've made a switch to the more of the business side, which includes corporate formation, civil litigation. I also advise clients on employment-related matters. And my firm basically focuses on primarily very early stage startups and entrepreneurs. We work with a lot of freelancers. My law firm also handles patent and intellectual property and trademark matters. So yeah, my experience is mostly with very early stage business owners or people who have a concept for a business and need help figuring out how to set up that business and get going, as well as more established clients that have had their business up and running and now need to take it to the next level. So that's my experience.
All right, great. So for context, Shanti, a lot of people who are going to be watching are folks that are maybe first-time entrepreneurs. And so, the idea of a lot of this is going to be foreign to them. Can you tell us a little bit about what in the world a legal structure is and why we care?
Sure. So you can start your business, you can have a business without having a formal legal structure. So you could be like just out there, for instance, like a consultant offering your services to people, and you can be doing that without a formal legal structure for your business. Why that's not a great idea, or at least not the best idea, is because when you're out there running a business, you're not protecting yourself from any sort of liability. So what that means is if someone sues you for whatever reason, if you don't have a business structure in place, your personal assets are at risk. So we advise clients to form a business structure for that reason, number one. Number two, it's just a more professional way to run a business. And the cost is relatively low, especially if you're starting out with just some simple business with yourself or a partner to do it. So it's a good idea to just protect yourself and get your business off on the right foot, protect your assets, and have a way to have a separate entity to have your contracts with and to just run your business. So that's why it's a good idea for any entrepreneur who's thinking of starting a business.
All right, and so when's a good time to actually be thinking about setting up a legal structure? Is it somewhere during ideation? Is it when I bring in partners? Is it when I start selling? Or is it when I actually start turning revenue? Sort of where do you, or I guess profit, I should say, or even when I start thinking about investors, where in those many steps along the line for a new company might they really want to go ahead and get a legal structure?
I think shortly after ideation, before the company starts really doing very much. For instance, if you want to open a business bank account and start having money, your money, either money you're bootstrapping with it, your personal money, or if you're raising money, you want to have a business account that money can go into and not going into your personal bank account. So in order to get a business account, most banks require you to come in with your business already formed as like a legal entity and have the incorporation or LLC documents in hand. So in order to even get that basic step going, having your business account, you need to have your legal entity formed. So I recommend doing it in the beginning before you actually start engaging in business and raising money and doing anything like that.
All right. So in that case, can you explain to us a little bit about what the different legal structures are and when I should choose one versus another?
Sure. So that's a good question. And I think that's the first question that an entrepreneur should ask is, what structure should I choose? I think basically it's a couple considerations. One is, what are your short-term needs, and is your business going to be doing in the short term? And that can help dictate whether you should be what kind of business you should be. So, I mean, the two main forms are an LLC or a corporation. And a lot of people bring up S corps, but that's not an actual separate business form. It's just a way how you want to be taxed. So it's not its own form. So we're really thinking about an LLC and a corporation. I tend to basically, the difference is an LLC is I would say it's a simpler structure, and it's good for businesses that are going to be generating revenue like from the actual business itself. Like, they're not depending on raising a lot of money from investors. So for instance, a consultant or a lawyer or someone like that that's going to be planning to offer services in exchange for money. As soon as you get your business up and running, get your name out there, you should be making money through selling your services. The same as for someone who might have like a brick and mortar business. Once you start selling your products or you're selling classes or whatever, you're generating sales. A business like that, you're not going to be needing to raise a ton of capital. You're not going to be going out pitching your ideas to investors and all of that. So for that reason, I would recommend an LLC for someone whose business is more service-based, and who's not depending on raising a large amount of capital to get going. One reason is that LLC is a pretty simple structure. So if you are doing a business by yourself or with a partner, an LLC is great because you have one document. It just lays out the general rules for the LLC. It says that you and your partner essentially would have like equal interest in the LLC. And it's quite simple to change. So if you want to add another partner, you can just amend that document to add one person. So an LLC is good in that way. It's also very simple to pay your taxes with an LLC. You just take whatever money you're earning from the LLC and you pass it through as your personal income, and you're only taxed once. So an LLC is really great for that kind of simple business structure that is not dependent on raising a lot of capital. A corporation, on the other hand, is a good structure for a business that does need to raise a lot of money and quickly before they can even have a product or be making any money at all. So like a tech startup, for instance, or something that, is going to require a lot of money before they can do anything. So a corporation's good because you can offer investors equity in your business in exchange for money. It's a bit harder to do that with an LLC without having the investor like playing more of a management role. So a corporation's good in that you can raise a lot of money in exchange for giving away equity. And most investors are going to look for you to have a corporation. Great. I would say one downside of a corporation is it's more expensive to set up, and more expensive to change around later in terms of adding founders, selling stock, all of this other stuff. But it's going to be something that you would need to build into the cost of your business, basically.
Great.
I hope that was clear. If there's a way to make it simpler.
No, that was really clear. And I also like how you drew the delineations between, like, the end of the day, it's really like, do you want to do a partnership or do you want to do a corporation? And a lot of things around the corporation are how you want to be taxed. Can we talk about that a little bit more? I mean, like, there's, from my perspective or like my experience, I've seen a lot of people, especially with social ventures, talk about, S Corp versus maybe doing a B Corp or anything else. Is there anything someone should be thinking about when considering those other newer structures, or just the different types of structures within corporations?
Yeah, so an S Corp is basically a corporation that is being asked to be taxed like an LLC. So, I mean, a normal corporation, you're paying taxes twice. You're paying taxes first on the income, the money that the corporation is making. And then you're paying a second tax on your personal income that you're getting from the corporation. So like a founder is going to maybe pay themselves a salary from the corporation, and then the corporation is also going to be making money. So the tax is coming twice, basically, which is fine. At some point, you need to be doing this, but an S corp allows you to ask to be taxed as an LLC and only pay tax once on the income that you're deriving. An S corp is good, but it's limited in certain ways. So one way it's limited is an S corp, for example, you can only have investors that are US citizens. So if you want to raise money from people in other countries, like you can't be an S corp. You're also limited to 100 shareholders. So you can't like raise money from like a ton of people, like Kickstarter, not Kickstarter, but just something where you need to be able to like have a lot of investors, then you can't be an S corp. So there are limitations on that. So it's probably a better idea for like a corporation that's just starting out than one that really needs to be like doing a more advanced round. But it's fine. You can start out as an S corp, and then when you do your taxes the next year, you just like file as a C corp. So it's not a permanent structure in any kind of way. It's just a way you fill out your tax paperwork, essentially. A benefit corporation, or a B corp, is pretty new. There are not actually, as far as I know, tax advantages to being a B corp. You're still taxed like a regular corporation, or even an S corp. I think the reason why I've seen benefit corporations being used is if you truly do have like a social purpose to your business, and you want to use the benefit corporation status as a way to really like market yourself and distinguish yourself from like other companies that are claiming to do the same thing. So it's kind of like, it's really showing your investors that like you're committed to this mission, and it allows the company to sometimes act in the best interest of fulfilling the mission and not just the best interest of their shareholders. So a benefit corporation can be good, but I think it's best suited for a company that's really going to gain some kind of competitive advantage by showing you're like for real like, serious about your mission.
Great. And just to let everyone know, actually, or a little sneak peek for everybody, the business case is actually about choosing the difference between a B Corp versus maybe a regular LLC or S Corp, and maybe even a nonprofit. It's an all catch-all for Shanti.
Oh my God. Disclaimer, nonprofit, I do not have, I've experience with for-profit. So I am not going to be able to advise so much on nonprofits, but.
Nevertheless, we'll still do the business case.
Okay.
So, but before we get to the business case, want to know a little bit about your favorite tools. In particular, when someone's trying to figure out, what type of legal structure should I be? Do you have any favorite tools? And additionally, if anybody is going to go out and actually, they're ready to get a legal structure, do you have any favorite tools for them to use?
Oh, sorry. My fell. Hold on one moment.
All right.
Okay. So I think that there are a lot of good resources that kind of explain the difference between an LLC and a C Corp. So I think it is helpful to read up on that, so you get a sense of like you just get a sense of what you need to look at the sample documents and see what like an operating agreement looks like, which is what an LLC uses to like govern itself, versus like corporation is going to have a lot of other documents. It's going to have bylaws. You can see like through sites like Duocracy, which is I think a good site that has a lot of free document templates online, like just a way to kind of review them for yourself to get a sense of like what are the actual legal documents involved. I think Quora can be a good resource if you're forming, for instance, a corporation and you just want to get a sense of how other people are deciding how to like allocate control between like a first founder and then someone they're bringing on, and like things like that, ideas about whether you should have vested stocks, whether you should be giving someone sweat equity versus like actual compensation. I think Quora is a good place to get a lot of those questions answered. Founders Workbench is another website that has a lot of, can help you create like free documents for your company. One thing I would advise against, and a pitfall, is really like trying to do everything yourself, particularly if you're forming a corporation. I think an LLC, just single member, or you and your one partner where you're sharing everything 50-50, like you can get that set up like through LegalZoom or something like low cost. A corporation, I have had just so much of what I end up doing is helping people that like did random documents online and it wasn't what they needed to be doing. And then the transaction cost of like paying a lawyer to go back and fix it is much higher than it would have been if you just like had a lawyer advise you on it in the beginning. So, and it's also for like people forming a corporation. The reason why you're forming a corporation is because you need to be getting investors and raising capital. And so you're gonna need to have that structure right anyway at some point, right? So you might as well try to get it right in the beginning and not have to like scramble and hustle and like get everything in order once you're thinking of doing a round and spending like thousands of dollars at that point. So those are some resources that are out there. One other thing I didn't mention is deciding what state to form your business in. A lot of people make the mistake of just choosing the state wherever they are living in, as opposed to like a more strategic state for like forming a corporation. So like for instance, New York, it's very difficult to go from an LLC to a corporation. If you form a Delaware LLC, it's quite easy to just turn it into a corporation. So I would tell people like, hey, you might start your business out small, but at some point, do you think you might want to become a corporation and expand and take on investors? And if they say, yeah, then I'm like, well, then you probably don't want to be a New York LLC. You should be a Delaware LLC. And if you're a corporation, I would never really advise on being a New York corporation. I would always pretty much say Delaware. So that's another consideration.
Awesome. Yeah, got my best practices and worst practices in there too. So a 3-for-1 question. Okay, so moving on to the business case, which I promised was a mix of social venture questions. So imagine this. We have 2 partners. Let's call them Aaron and Candace. And they basically started a socially minded venture. Until now, they've been pretty much self-funded. And now they're starting to consider, other sources of funding. Do they do grants? Do they do friends and family rounds? Do they go out and try to get angel investors? So as they're considering these different sources that they're going to reach out to, they also realize that a lot of this has to do also with their legal structure. If they choose one legal structure, it opens them up to a certain form of funding. And if they really believe that their business is going to need certain forms of funding or revenue, it kind of dictates also their legal structure. So a little bit of a chicken and egg situation. That said, it's going to be about 2 months before the whole grant season starts. So they sort of want to get this squared away in the next couple of weeks. Can you walk us through how they should go about thinking about this, the different steps they should take, and how long they should spend on each step?
Okay. So it's a given that they're doing some sort of like social impact?
Yeah, so they certainly have a social impact, but based off of a lot of things we've already talked about, they could do it in a number of different ways. Either they could, really be a nonprofit and go out there and just sort of sell it, like hope that grants and, funders are going to help, or donators are going to help them out. Mm-hmm. Or they could really turn around and try to sell it to the public and, keep that tagline that, hey, we're a socially minded company. We don't harm this or harm that.
Yeah. I mean, it seems like if you're just starting out and you want to have room to like test and figure out what is going to be the most successful way to like reach that mission, then it seems to me, unless you completely know you want to be a nonprofit, that you wouldn't just start out as a nonprofit. It seems like you would start out as a as a private entity and then see how that goes. And then maybe you could form like a nonprofit wing that doesn't hold like the assets of the company or something like that. So you can like have a mixed structure later as your business grows. But I would say to this kind of person that doesn't for sure know they want to be a nonprofit, they want to have the flexibility of having like selling a service or a product, and then maybe getting investors on board and maybe raising money from family and friends. Like I would say if you want that flexibility, you'd start out as like a for-profit entity. In terms of deciding whether to be like a LLC or a corporation, I think it really depends on what the service is or what like you're going to be selling. So, and if you can start selling it and making money, or at least sustaining your business like quickly without raising investment, I mean, that's one consideration. But if you need to be getting a lot of money and to even get going, then you probably want to be a corporation. If you, like I said, can just two of you together start doing what you're doing and generating enough to get you going, and just like maybe at some point you hire a third person, or maybe you hire an employee who can help out with that, and maybe you get a space and you're doing your services out of a space like that, maybe is something where an LLC could be a good idea. So if that's the like starting point, I would advise this pair. How fast can you start making money without getting investors, and yeah, what kind of services are you going to be selling, basically? So those are the initial considerations.
Great. And then how much time does someone need to leave themselves in order to do any of these structures? Like, it sounds like LLC is fairly simple to do, but then corporations are harder. Is there just like a normal set amount of time that it takes to, one, do the paperwork, and then two, actually submit it and get a response back from the government?
Yeah, so corporations are fast too. I didn't mean to say they take a long time. So there's like, you could form an LLC or a corporation with the state, like just like literally get the entity formed, get the name, get your document that says you formed the entity in like a week. Like it's very quick turnaround time. So you could have it can show up like you have your registered with the state, like Tanya Perkins LLC or Tanya Perkins Incorporated, can be very quick. What takes a little longer is getting the documents done that will like set up how your company is going to govern yourself. So with a LLC, all it is an operating agreement. Like I said, if it's just two people splitting 50-50 or one person, it's very quick. If you have something where it's like four people, one person's going to be getting like 10%, one person's going to be getting 30%, like one person's just giving money but isn't going to help manage the LLC at all, like that's a more complicated operating agreement, and that can take like a lawyer like a week or so, or even longer to turn around. With a corporation, same thing. You can get it on file with the state very quickly. If it's a simple structure, like, you know, two people are going to just be like same amount of equity. One person's going to be secretary, one person's going to, like, they're both going to be on the board, whatever. It's not that complicated to get those documents done either. It's just if you're going to have a more complicated structure, that can take longer. But in either way, I would say like it's not a long process. So it's not something like you need to do months out before you start like opening your bank account and getting the business going. So.
All right, awesome. So that wraps up our case. Any last thoughts before we say goodbye?
No, I don't think so. I think there's a lot of resources out there to get an idea of what you need to do. I guess my one thing is, if you have any sort of like feeling that if you're not understanding the documents or it's kind of confusing, like just try to, you can ask a lawyer to help, even if it's just for like a consultation, because I think just trying to download stuff off the internet and like printing random documents out, like it does have consequences when you might like find out you did something incorrect and everything you've been doing the last year like wasn't being done legally. And I mean, it's a mistake that can be fixed, but it can just cost more later. So you know, that's my main advice. Educate yourself, and then when it comes time to like really get the documents executed, consider having a lawyer help you. So.
All right. Well, awesome. Thank you so much for your time, Shanti. Really appreciate it. Hope to bring you back and talk more about various legal issues when it comes to operating one's business. And also, thanks everybody for watching. Again, really appreciate your time as we go through this exploration about how to get stuff done. Anyway, good night, Shanti.
Good night.